Oh, good.
Thank God. So, I don't know how I can. It's just I was thinking about what would I compare Allie's absence to. So the National Hockey League in 04-05 shut down for an entire season. The hockey fans were devastated for an entire year. When it finally came back, it was like this huge thing, a celebration. And everything. It's the same kind of thing with Allie being gone for 12 weeks now. You've been gone or what?
What? Some people might say not long enough.
No, she's not the truth.
I think 3 weeks you were.
So you just got in the car, you and your husband, your two kids, and you drove around to family members all around the Northeast here. That's pretty cool.
We did. We haven't seen some people in 11 years. There's, a little nephew we had never met. There's niece and nephew that we hadn't seen in 9 years. So my kids were babies. Like Ben was barely walking.
Right.
He was causing trouble even though he could barely walk. But so, it was so great. It is true, honey. You were.
Did you do one of those where you just showed up, or did you call everybody in advance and let them know you're coming? I mean, we had relatives just show up.
Yeah, no, we did plan it in advance. We were couch surfing, and we were so grateful for people putting us up. And some people I think they might have wanted to get a sense of who we were after a decade gone, and they were like, "Okay, you can come." So they got a sneak preview, in advance, like an advance scouting visit, and then said, "Come on."
Now, I'm not saying you're like this at all, but there's been times in the past with me and my family where somebody comes to visit. It's a great idea at first, and after a couple of days, like, okay, that's enough. You need to go now.
It's not necessarily
that they're bad people. It's just I think it's like you're in some crowded space. You're all packed in together, right? So.
Yeah, and Tom likes his space, and Tom likes his 3:30 in the morning getting up and things like that. And stinky juicers, I'm sure you juice a lot of things to just smell. I can't imagine what your kitchen's like. So
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
It's pretty nasty sometimes.
I bet there is. There's a lot of natural stuff going on there.
Oh, one of the best things, like I get some vegetables sometimes, and I think I've got too many vegetables. I'm here by myself, so they're going to go bad. So I'll just randomly throw them in the juicer. And I made some pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, I made one time. We called it a tequila salad. I made a whole bunch of stuff and poured tequila. It was a Super Bowl. So we poured tequila in with it. It was actually pretty tasty. Yeah.
That sounds like poor Sam. Sam is here in the kitchen. Is it okay for you to say hi? We're live, Sam.
No.
He may not choose to say hello, but for all of the listeners, my poor son, Sam, who's now 16 and extremely strong, he would box me if I did this to him today. But for his first meal, you're told that you should really feed your children exactly what you eat, because that will ensure their palate is, very broad and they're able to handle all kinds of different foods and it's healthier. So I'm like, okay, he's coming off baby food.
He has the eating habits of a horse.
I don't know if you heard that. He says, I have the eating habits of a horse. I did grow up on a farm. So I took a veggie wrap with like some tuna or some chicken in it in a little tortilla, and I threw it in the blender with some ice and ground it up, and I made like a chicken wrap smoothie. Right. And it was absolutely horrible. It was so bad. But I mean, otherwise, how are you supposed to feed a child exactly what I guess they didn't mean that literally what you're eating. I guess they meant like start with some peas or something else. But.
I agree. Hey, I'm going to get real quick touch on something. I know it's not directly related to you, but your husband being in the Navy, in the military, obviously. So Afghanistan has fallen now to the Taliban again. And a lot of men and women fought and sacrificed their lives and maybe lost their lives to make Afghanistan what it was and the freedoms and all that kind of stuff. What's your sense how that's going to affect people that have risked their lives or lost their lives to do that?
That's a really tough question. We were talking about that over dinner last night, just a little bit. I have to say I've had my nose buried in COVID, but so I'm only kind of distantly aware of what's going on. But it really, I didn't personally serve, but I can tell you it strikes me as very much of like a puncturing or just taking the wind out of some kind of sails. And I'm sure that's a very bad metaphor, but I can imagine people who served there, went there multiple times, lost friends there, maybe were injured there themselves, and even developed friendships there while they were working side by side. I would imagine that it's extremely hard to see this happen. And it would just make me feel like just a complete loss of, confidence in what we're doing and how we make decisions and, what we ask of people to do and how much they sacrifice. And then we just go, oops, I guess we shouldn't have done that. It's really hard. It's extremely complicated.
And you're right, it is so complicated, but that thought that, okay, I risked my life, my buddy, my friend lost his life, limbs, all that kinds of stuff. So it's going to be a tough one. We did that swim across the Hudson 2 weeks ago, I guess now we did that swim across the Hudson when you were gone. And so we were out there. The first year they did it was like about 30 Navy SEALs and other people. Last year was about 50. This year they had about 140 people swimming across the Hudson. So it was actually funny. Not funny. this woman who was not part of the military. I was friends with somebody. She was a tiny little woman. She was swimming across and got to the second barge. There's two barges. So first you go swim to the second one. And she started. She was hypothermic, so just shaking. And where's I going with that story? Yes. Sorry, I got lost. So she was hypothermic, and there's no blankets. Nobody's wearing any shirts or anything like that except the guys that are working. Like one of them. So I had my T-shirt on, so I took it off and gave it to her. And I've got the big scar on my stomach for I lost my spleen. So one of the Navy SEALs comes walking over. He was there, and he goes, "Oh, you got the same scar." And I'm thinking, "Oh, he must. Yeah, he's got the same scar." I'm thinking he must have had a spleen removed. So I says, "Oh yeah, he gets your spleen removed too." And it wasn't just what he said, but it was how he said it. He goes, "No, I got shot. They had to rearrange some organs and they sewed me back up." Kind of another day at the office, right? He was a great guy. We got chatting about stuff, and he just that attitude about, he gets shot. It wasn't like with me, it was my spleen. That was serious enough as it was, but this guy gets shot. So it's just, they were fantastic people. Again, I know I've talked about before, but a really emotional, patriotic day where they do all these ceremonies before they leave. And then when I get there too, so it was a great time. But so hypothermic, what's happened? So your body gets so cold that what happens? Like this woman's lips were blue and shaking, and
I mean, you're not the kind of animal that can just adjust to your environment and change your body temperature so you match it. You're just losing too much heat and everything slows down. So and slows down way too much. So
it doesn't the shivering, isn't your body meant to shiver to try to heat it up too? Like
try to heat you back up. Yeah. My boys were swimming a lake for a really, really long time, like a lake in Washington State in a very cold water, and they were just having a blast. But when they finally got out after like an hour and a half, we sat them by the fire, and it took them a long time to warm back up. So that, in some ways they adjusted a bit, and you can swim for a decent amount of time, I guess, if you're in shallow water and you can keep moving. But I don't remember the exact amounts of time that you can stay in water at various temperatures, but it's not all that long.
Right.
You just lose so much heat.
So your son's, is it Sam that's not feeling well, got the cold?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a good topic probably for today. Delta variant is out there and surging and causing a lot of infection. It looks like it's actually more infectious. I know we've talked in the past, and I was kind of waiting for more data to come through and to really be convinced that it's more infectious. It looks like it really is. Seems to get in you and replicate really fast once it's in. For people who are vaccinated, your immune system knocks that back fast, the good old T cells that we've talked about. So their viral load in people who are vaccinated curve down really fast. Other people's immune systems are working by themselves with no advance warning. They also contain it, but it takes a few days longer. So people who are vaccinated, while that viral load is really high, they still, it looks like, can transmit the infection if they manage to get actually infected. They can still pass it, but for a shorter period of time.
So let me back up there one second, Ali. So if you're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, either Johnson & Johnson or whatever, which one it is, you can still get the virus. It doesn't mean it is more likely to stop you from getting the virus.
It looks like you're less likely to develop symptoms and get very, very sick, like very, very unlikely. Less than 0.1% of people who are vaccinated end up in the hospital. So, I mean, the value of being vaccinated is absolutely 100% there. I was just checking Virginia data, and of all of the people who are in the hospital, 98% of them are unvaccinated. So really the take-home message here is vaccination changes this from a really life-threatening virus for some people, depending on age and other health conditions. It changes it to a nasty cold for some, a mild cold for others, almost nothing, or in fact, nothing for others. It depends on how your body responds.
Even if you're asymptomatic, you can still spread it. You can have it and still spread it. Is that?
I think it's less likely. It's looking like if you're symptomatic, obviously you have a higher viral load, and it's looking like symptomatic people tend to transmit more than asymptomatic people, and that just makes some sense. I'm sure that the specific amount more to quantify that, I'm going to be rusty on that specific amount, but it's safe to say that symptomatic people transmit more than asymptomatic. The real message, though, is just one dose or two if you are able to stick to the recommendations. But I'm willing to chat with anyone about any amount of vaccine that they're willing to consider getting, because just one dose sets off kind of the warning sign for your immune system that something's out there that it should pay attention to. And the T cells are ready, even with one dose, to help you avoid being put in the hospital or die from this virus. So I'm just thinking, I just talked to 4 people in the neighborhood while I was out running. I'm really looking for people who are skeptical like I am and really thinking this through hard. And I want to hear what they're thinking about. And so that was the conversation we just had, is just think about at least one dose because it's just a warning sign that you can get ready.
It kind of reminds me, I usually introduce Allie. I apologize. She's been gone for a while. So Allie has a company called abcmedicalwriting.com. So
Right.
Just so people know, it took me months to remember what that title was. She's been fantastic explaining the virus and the vaccines and other stuff, other medical issues and psychological issues as well. But that's her. So we're going to bounce around a little bit here. I want to talk about Sam a little bit more, him being sick, but it reminded me of something. Right. You and your friends wrote an article in the Washington Post recently. And again, this is before the Delta variant. So I don't know if it's changed or not, but recommending that kids should be allowed to go back to school without masks on. I mean, maybe there's some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, go without masks. Has that changed now with the Delta variant?
I would have to say sitting on the fence on that. I am not seeing enough data here in the U.S. yet to say that what we saw in the UK when Delta went through, they went through the Delta variant before we did. It started in mid-May for them, and it started end of June for us. So they're maybe 6 weeks ahead of us. Their data is really pretty good. They have a national health system, and I feel like there was enough data for me to believe that the hospitalization rates in the kids who got COVID were not more serious for Delta than for Alpha. I've looked at curves a couple of different ways, just comparing curves and also looking at the rates of kids who go to the hospital, with the denominator being the bottom part of that fraction being kids who actually had the disease. So it's something you have to keep looking at. There's in the US, the only data I can get my hands on right now is hospitalization rates across the whole population of kids. So I'm not able to restrict that denominator to only kids who have gotten infection, restricting it to cases only. I have not found a good data set for that yet. And it's really frustrating that we're not actually tracking things across regions or across states well enough for me to do that. I was playing around with the Tennessee data yesterday, and I have to combine actually 2 different data sets in order to get that simple fraction. So I am the kind of person who does not jump to conclusions. I don't have enough data yet to firmly say yes or no. I would be surprised if it's really different here than in the UK. It's the same Delta variant. The thing that might be different is access to care here in the US, and also obesity rates might be different, and the impact of poverty might be different, and that gets to access to care. The weather's also different, and in the South, we're seeing that the cases are really surging. And where places are only half vaccinated, and if people are all crammed indoors to, try to enjoy the AC in a bar or in a home, we know that the virus transmits very easily in those settings. We know that it's nearly as transmissible as chickenpox. So we're seeing a lot of cases in the South, and that does end up meaning that more kids are going to get infected because that tends to happen in the household. That's where the virus transmits very easily because no one's masked in the household. The more crowded the house, the more easily you're going to infect more people. So I think we just end up, by virtue of that fact alone, putting more kids at risk. And then 1% of all kids end up in the hospital. So 1% of a larger number of people ends up meaning that hospitals are seeing more kids. Does that mean of all of those kids vaccinated, a higher fraction are going to the hospital? I'm not convinced of that yet. So I don't have enough data to say severity has changed. And to your question about masks, I'm still feeling like, it's a really complicated question. You have to wear a good mask and you have to wear it well for you to expect it to actually work for 8 hours. Can you pop on a mask that doesn't fit terribly well and jump into Target or Walmart or the grocery store for 20 minutes while you shop and get out and feel like it helped your child prevent infection? You could say yes, but it could also be that the market has better ventilation, is cooler, and doesn't have as many people as a classroom. So it's really hard to know what is making the difference. Yeah. I think if I were a parent of a high-risk child who maybe is obese or maybe has asthma or diabetes, and I'm looking at going back to school, and I know those are risk factors, and I know that Delta is twice as transmissible, and my community has a high prevalence rate everywhere in the US right now is high transmission rate everywhere. There's not really like a handful of counties that are not seeing, completely red on the map. Then I would consider masking if I had a high risk child. I'd also make sure that everyone in my house was vaccinated because we know that is how the child is going to be best protected. It's called ring vaccination. So put everyone in close contact with that child, make sure they're protected, make sure they have 2 doses. If somebody has to go work in a really crowded setting, like one of the parents has to work in a crowded setting and high transmission, then I might consider suggesting to that parent that they mask at work, even though they're fully vaccinated. If that parent comes home and has symptoms like COVID, guess what? If I had a high-risk child at home, I would suggest, hey, you got a couple days of symptoms. I would keep your distance from the child. I would go get tested with a rapid test. I mean, so like my opinion varies depending on the risk factor of the person in the house, right?
Yeah.
And especially if that person can't be vaccinated. So really tough question. For your average healthy child between ages 5 and 11, it honestly is not yet looking like it's a major risk factor. It's looking like most kids move through it. 4% of kids might have difficulty concentrating. They might be tired and sleepy 28 to 56 days after infection. That's a UK study. To me, I'm not living with that child who reported those symptoms. That also sounds like this has been a really long pandemic. It's changed a child's social life, who isn't sleeping during the summer. It's hard to make sense of data on paper without really knowing the kids behind the data points. So I think parental judgment is really important.
Yeah, and you touched on something there. I don't even know how you quantify this or rationalize it, but it's like 18 months now since this thing started. And I think there's so many people you talk to have just kind of fallen into that. So when you talk about all the data with the masks and all the numbers like us, totally, I respect your opinion totally. But it's like people are almost like, I'm over it. Like I just, they don't know what to believe. They're not necessarily doubting you, but they don't know what to believe. They said this before, now the mask, not the mask. Some places, now in New York City, you're going to go indoors. You're going to have to wear, immunized and all that kinds of stuff or vaccinated. My concern is like, and I get the same thing sometimes. I'm more like, oh God, enough of it already. Like,
right.
For so many ways. You're just saying, you know what? I don't care. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And it's also like, you know what? I'm just tired of it. It's just, the psychological part of it, right? So
yeah, somebody called that decision fatigue. One of my friends who I want to bring on with you, Lucy Mcbride, has gotten extremely a huge following because of her reasonable and rational advice. She's an internist in DC that I really want to bring on to chat with you, but she just talked about burnout, and she talked about how parents are dealing with worry and fear and concern and anxiety for their kids. And it's exhausting weighing all these risks. It's really challenging. You get so tired of the tedium, and I just completely appreciate that. So when I'm asked these questions, I really try to personalize it to like, where are you and who do you have in your house? Because my answer really depends on that. And once parents get comfortable with their risk factors and what they can and can't do, they'll feel better, because we all want to feel like we have a sense of internal control, not waiting for CDC and FDA and someone else to tell us what to do. We want to have a sense that we can navigate this ourselves.
It's funny. I live in a condominium complex. It's pretty big, and the owners of the complex, they come in I think it's every year now to do an inspection just to see everything's all right. So at the start of the pandemic, they were going to come in last time. I wouldn't let them come in. I was adamant. Nope, you're not coming in. It's a pandemic started. This. They came in this morning. They said, come on in. Yeah, take the mask off. I don't care. It's like I thought about it after, like I was a totally different person. I remember at the start of the pandemic how I was, and now I'm there now. So it's it's tough stuff. Okay, let's go back to Sam really quick there. We're going to touch on some more stuff. So Sam's sick, got a cold. Now, you've got him on turmeric. I'm a huge believer in the power of ginger. So I have fresh ginger root, and I have my juicer. So probably
tell us what you do.
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, I had a cold. I was in Manhattan. We were playing a charity hockey game. I get, the sore throats get started and all that. Somebody said to me, Tom, go get a shot of ginger. And I was like, shot of ginger? I'm an old farm boy. I don't know, have a shot of tequila is what I'll have. And so I went and got the shot of ginger, burns going down. And I was like, what the heck am I drinking? But honestly, it worked like wonders. It was like, I'm not saying it totally cured me, but it's like this instantly I felt better anyways. So now I do a shot of ginger and a shot of turmeric every day. So 15 milliliters each of ginger and turmeric. So I get a liquid turmeric. Part of the thing you got to remember with turmeric, turmeric's a great anti-inflammatory. So it's got great stuff for you in your body, but turmeric is hard to digest in your body. It's either if you get your own turmeric, you got to add pepper or some sort of fat to it to get it to absorb into your body. The liquid turmeric I buy at our Happy Place Costco already has stuff in it to help it digest into your system. And then with my ginger, I have the fresh root ginger and my juicer. So every week I juice up a big batch of ginger. Just you don't do anything special. Throw it into your juicer. The juice comes out. So I have those mason jars. So I mix up half of ginger and half of pre-made turmeric. So it's already there. I just shake it up and pour it in my little measuring cup. And to me, it's just like, I'm just a huge believer. I really didn't know at first, but then you have taught me to do my own research on it's true though. It's true. I read up more on ginger and watched some videos on YouTube and everything. The powers of the ginger and really what it does for us. So I recommend to everybody. It doesn't taste great going down. It burns. but it's kind of especially if you have a cold, it's kind of that comforting burn.
Okay, we'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
So you literally, if you say you juice ginger, if I told my husband that you juice a ginger, would he know what you mean? Like, do you put water in with it in the juicer?
No,
or what
you just put the ginger root right into the top of the juicer, and it comes out. It squeezes out all the ginger, and then you're left with some people even save the what's left over, the leftover part of it, and use it for recipes and everything. And you can do that. Okay. But it just gets the juice out, and it's, to me, I'm just a huge. If you read about what it's a really boost your immune system. Now, I think I can't remember if you were gone already or not, but we got into the sea moss too. Did we talk about the sea moss?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, I've done more research on that too, and I've been doing. There's so many things that are great for you. And again, it's supposed to be really good for your immune system as well. I just recommend that everybody do their own homework, as Allie has taught us, and really look at like the stuff for me, like the immune system stuff with all these viruses going on, and all just generally for your health. Mm-hmm. The more you can do to boost your own immune system, I think is important. So.
100%. I just was out running and grabbed 4 people who were doing some work. They were doing some painting, and we're taking a break. And they said the same thing. They really wish that in addition to all of this, you should do this, you should do that business, that there was more attention paid to, basic health and immune boosting and natural immunity. So I 100% agree. My sister-in-law does a great job of researching this and being intentional about what she eats. So I decided when I got back, with your guidance and example and hers, to actually think about, maybe I'm not taking that great care of myself. I do try to eat well, but a multivitamin cannot hurt. So yeah. I got that for myself and my kids, just to round out any deficiencies that we have.
Well, I just think, and again, you taught us, I think the more research you do on what you eat, I think it would help your diet too. Like people say to me, well, I know I'm not supposed to eat this, but this isn't that bad or whatever. But if you really study on what good foods do well for your body, what bad foods do to your body, you maybe, I like to think you maybe train your mind to look at food differently. It's great to enjoy food and go to a restaurant. I'm not saying that you don't want to enjoy your food, but maybe start to look at it more like there's a purpose to what I'm putting in my body and when I'm putting it in my body, right? So the fasting, I think, is really important. So I start off with the amino energy drink and the apple cider vinegar. I think there's benefits to that. So again, the ginger and turmeric, again, it's not that tasteful, but it's a short thing. It's small. It's like a shot of tequila, whatever you're doing to get it in. And then all the other foods, like, I have my smoothie. I make sure that, I'm having my almond milk and my avocados and the peptide collagens and the protein powder. So there's always a purpose going. But when I eat, I've learned to get my air fryer. So I kind of got away from regular potatoes, thinking that they were more fat. Now I look back, it was more like the butter and the sour cream you put on. So now I make them up in French fries, put them into my air fryer. And it's a lot of carbs, but it's all low fat carbs. So
yeah, that's good. I just I actually switched. I thought about you because we used to get tater tots to go with. What do we eat tater tots with for dinner? I forget. We're really naughty.
Tater tots go with chicken fingers or something like that. Is that
what? Oh, we get veggie burgers, Beyond Burgers. Oh. We put tater tots on the side. It's just a really good dinner. I'm sorry, I completely spaced on that. So we're doing really well with the Beyond Burgers, but then we throw tater tots on the side. Yeah. And you just cannot stop eating them. And a handful of them is one serving, but who eats one handful? So I actually stopped and read the pack, because side by side, right next to the tater tots, is fries. And there are 2 different kinds of fries. So if you actually look at the trans fats, the sat fats, and the total fats in them, and sodium, you can actually make yourself a better choice. So I brought home, it wasn't crinkle fries, it was something else. There were 2 fries that looked identical, the same manufacturer, same bag, everything, but the adjective was different. So it really threw me off. But you have to look at which one has the better nutritional content. Grabbed it, brought it home. I got in a little bit of trouble because I did not bring home the tater tots to do a side-by-side test. Well, I said, well, of course, we already know we like the tater tots. We won't try the other ones and give them a fair chance if we bring home the other stuff. So family actually tried what I brought home, and they agreed it was better. And we got half the sodium and fat in there. So,
the sodium. That's the thing with those pre-made foods. Like you touched on trans fat. There's a lot of trans fats, a lot of sodium in it. So I take my potatoes now. I slice them up in little French fries, put them in my little Ziploc bags, and I throw them in the freezer. So they're already cut up, ready to go. And then I throw them right in the air fryer. Yeah, it's just a regular potato.
Air fryer. Okay, we'll do that. Hey, I want to talk about the common cold, because it is going to come back, and it's probably back. And I don't know how many of your listeners are dealing with this at home too, and it's just a kind of a mess. But in the South, they had RSV go through respiratory syncytial virus, which is kind of a problem for babies, big problem for babies. Almost everybody gets it by the time they're age 2. And then we have 4 other viruses that we're watching: adenovirus, rhinovirus, metapneumovirus, and a couple others. CDC tracks them. And there was enough going on last year with mitigations that we just didn't have these viruses circulating. Now they're out there. And so you were talking about Sam having a cold. Well, if you have high-risk people visiting you or living under your roof like I have for the last 10 days, and you have someone with a cold who has COVID-like symptoms, it can send you into a major panic if you're like me and you're an epidemiologist and you're thinking, gosh, I have high-risk people in the house. This is an airborne virus. What do I do? So I wanted to just touch on really briefly, if people are in that situation, I actually went and bought, it's too expensive. I wish we had better access to this, but if you're in a tough spot and you can't get out to get a rapid test at a pharmacy or at your doctor's office or urgent care, the rapid test with the swab, if they're all booked or if there's no drive-throughs, because everyone's getting tested right now, it looks like everything's crazy. It's $24, you get 2 tests, and it actually was not that hard to use. So that gives you an answer in 15 minutes. You basically self-swab, 5 seconds each. You only put it up to here, so it's not the brain tickler. And then you put 6 drops of a reagent in one little opening in this test thing. You slide your little swab in, you seal it up, and you wait. And it's like a pregnancy test for anyone who's watched those. It's a lateral flow test, and so the reagent flows across the strip. And if it's positive, there's 2 stripes. If it's negative, there's just 1 for the control. 15 minutes later, you have really good evidence as to whether or not you have COVID in the house or not. They recommend 2 tests, 36 hours apart, to confirm. They are very specific, which means they're very good at figuring out if you do not have COVID. So if you have COVID, odds are good it'll find it. The times when it's not very sensitive, meaning you have COVID, but it didn't quite catch you, is very early on in infection. So say you were exposed to somebody, and then you test within 2 days of exposure, the virus might be in you, but it hasn't really gotten into enough cells and replicated enough to drop its antigens, to drop the N protein on your mucous membranes. That's what it's looking for. So it hasn't really replicated enough to drop its like little leftovers around for the test to find it. So it'll miss you in the early stage. It'll miss you in the later stage when you're recovering, but it will catch you in the 2 to 4 days when you're most infectious. So it's very, very good for you to figure out, hey, I've got colds. I'm really worried about, going to practice, or I'm worried about going to a game. In my case, kids going to hockey practice and things like that. We're recommending for people who have the common cold, and you can't tell if it's COVID or not just by looking at yourself or checking symptoms, to think about getting rapid tested. And if you are in a real bind, I just wanted people to know it's available in the pharmacy for $24 for 2 tests. You can do it at home. That was good news because a teenager did not want to go out and deal with getting tested at urgent care. He just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah.
So,
maybe I'm totally naive. The world I'm living in, like I read the articles and I hear you talk about the rising cases and the Delta variant.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said before, it's like, really, is it really happening? And I'm not doubting anybody. It's like maybe I've just fallen into this malaise or whatever, and it's like,
yeah. It's there, Tom. It's a new kind of coronavirus. We have 4 already, and they've become the common cold. So there's 4 out there already. Most of us have already had them. This one is just the newest one on the stage, and it's pretty flashy and it's pretty cool, and it likes to, be strong. And the strongest one, it's like a foot race. The strongest one to replicate the fastest gets to win the foot race in terms of infecting people. Unfortunately, it's very, very serious for some people who have health conditions. It's really bad. It's 8 times worse than the flu. So, but for
it is. I'm just gonna ask that question. So it is 8. It isn't just the normal flu. It is 8 times worse.
No, it's not. It's not. For people who are older, it just has this terribly steep curve for mortality and morbidity for people who are older or people who have health conditions. And I think there's not 100% sure what's going on with that, but a lot of people are laying blame at the spike protein causing interactions with the cardiovascular system and sticking to the blood vessels and clotting and things like that. So it's really, no kidding, actually a really bad thing for people who have health conditions or are older. And you have to take good care of that body. For others, for the younger kids, that's where it's super complicated with the mask thing. It really depends on your situation, personal risk factors. But that's why it's a mess for people, because in our society, we have people with all different kinds of risks. right? And even their own perception of risk. We're just a really highly varied group. So everybody is sensitive in a different way.
I'm going to ask a really risky question right now because I think I know the answer already. And I saved it to the very end so we don't have to dwell on it too much. Maybe we can think about it until next week. We do need to know the update on your status for pull-ups. I'm assuming that is not good right now because of the family situation, traveling, and is that accurate?
That is accurate. I don't think I've done a post-trip, post-couch surfing pull-up test. I will report in next week. I will say this, though. I took weights and a yoga mat to the hockey rink, to the parking lot, and I actually had sweat dropping from my head onto the asphalt, measurable sweat drops in the parking lot yesterday.
There you go. Sunday. I like that. Yeah. I like that. That's good.
And I'm sore. So I can say I've not been, just kind of messing around, being lame, but the pull-ups, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's all right to rest the body. That's fine. So you rested the body. Now you're back at it. Yeah. I love them. I love the workouts. I love the workouts.
Parking lot workouts. I'll try to get somebody tonight. So what I've been doing is basically with this watch, you can tell what your heart rate is. And so 45 seconds on, 15 seconds off, keep the heart rate over like 120 or something. And it seemed to be a decent workout because you need that and you need cardio, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, whatever's getting your heart rate going up and down like that, that's excellent. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Good job. All right. So it's not that bad. So the pull-ups, this is vacation time. You're traveling. That's okay. It's fine. All right. So remember, I saw our good friend. She's been gone for like 17 weeks now. She's finally back. I know it's only been 3 weeks. abcmedicalwriting.com if you want to contact Allie. She's very knowledgeable, explains things very well about the virus. If you've got any questions at all, you can contact her. And good to see you back there, bud.
Thank you, Tom. It's good to see you too. It's great to see all of the grasshoppers too. I hope you're all doing well. And please fire questions away at Tom. I love them.
Yeah, definitely. And again, remember, Allie's husband is in the Navy. There's a lot of people serving in the military. It's I'm sure a little bit of an unnerving time right now, not knowing what the future is with everything going on in Afghanistan. So all the best to him as well. So.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And all the families out there who might be listening to you and kind of struggling thinking about the question that you posed at the beginning. Thank you for bringing that up and for talking about it. And I know you really care, Tom, about mental health and encouraging people to, just say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or this is really bugging me and I'm not really sure what to make of it yet, or just open the conversation. Because I think you're right. I think sometimes we find some clarity or some relief just by talking about it.
You know what? Very good point. I'm glad you brought that up like that. That's fantastic. You're right, because there's probably so many people out there that we know that are struggling with normal issues that struggle with mental health, but also all the stuff now with the pandemic and now Afghanistan and all the stuff that's going on. So a lot of people struggle with stuff. Yeah, don't feel like you're less of a man or less of a woman because you're explaining to somebody, listen, I need help. I need to talk to somebody. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just
not at all.
Not
at all. I mean, this is wearing on all of us. This pandemic is wearing on everybody. I mean, Tom and I joke around a lot and we smile a lot, but behind the scenes, I bet you 100% that the two of us both have our own struggles and challenges and times when it's hard to feel good about, a lot of stuff. Sometimes you're like, what's the point of all this anyway? Why am I staying fit today? Tomorrow I wake up and I gotta do it over again. And
very true. Yeah, it is true. Yep.
Family and kids and people to take care of and people who won't do what you want them to do. You're trying to influence them for good and they're on their own plans. So parents are really, parents of teenagers right now, it may be really, really hard for them to try to motivate them to do the routine self-care that they need to do to get through this as well.
Yeah, parents are going to remember that too, because we're both parents. And I remember how I was a son with my mother and father. I didn't want to listen to anything they said. My sons didn't want to listen to me. Somebody else would come along and give the same advice and they'll listen to that person who's, that's just the nature of being a parent. But it's even tougher now. You're right. So, yeah. It
is. And you have been wonderful with that, Tom. I'm sure, maybe you could do a show specifically for, teens sometime and just have a chat with them because you're such a role model and such a kind and generous person. You've kind of been there. And I personally have really appreciated you talking to my kids from time to time when they pop in and photo bomb us, video bomb us. And, there's coaches out there who have talked to my kids and been a great influence on them. So it really takes all of us helping each other.
Definitely. Actually, I get a real kick out of it too. Actually, I got invited to go up to New Canaan, Connecticut later on this afternoon to speak to a high school football team up there. So
really? Awesome.
Yeah, it's very rewarding for me too, and I appreciate you saying the kind words of how I'm hopefully helping other people. But I really find for me too, it really makes me a stronger person because I feel like now when people are reaching out to me specifically to help other kids, it means like, okay, I'm doing what I want to do. And so
that's wonderful. So what do you plan to talk about with them, or what did they ask you to talk about?
Yeah, well, they left it up to me what I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to talk about how one of my favorite topics is that come to the realization that you are not perfect and life is not fair. So I usually, when I have these kind of talks, I talk about some mistakes I made in the past and how I recovered from them. And it's kind of funny in some ways because I really make fun of myself with some of the stupid decisions I made in the past, but how I recovered from them as well. I think more to help the kids to realize, listen, here's this guy that's, played in the NHL for 11 years on Survivor and agent business and all that kinds of stuff. And they'll look at me as being successful. But when I tell them these stupid stories that I did, they're like, oh, okay, I guess there's nothing wrong with me. I'm going to make mistakes too. This guy made mistakes. So yeah, it's good stuff.
That's great, Tom. Well, take good care of yourself and enjoy the time with them. That's Definitely. Just a wonderful privilege and opportunity that you have.
Yeah, it's a great thing.
High five them for me. I'm so proud of these high schoolers that are just persevering through this pandemic.
Definitely, I agree. Good seeing you again, bud. We'll see you next week.
Okay.